Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar on from low 30s to high 40s on GMAT. And I'm Piyush and I'm going to be your main host in the webinar today. So before we start, I would like to know if all of you can hear me loud and clear. Please feel free to let me know if you guys can hear me clearly. I will be happy to see your responses. Please let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. Okay, yet to see any responses from you. Maybe there's a lag from to see the responses. I see some people now. Okay, great. So let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. Rahul says, yes, I can hear you. Great, Rahul. Welcome to this webinar. So those of you who are from India, I know it's pretty late, but happy Dhanteras to you and happy Diwali in advance. So Diwali is one of the biggest festivals in India and it's just around the corner. So I wish you a very, very happy Diwali and happy Dhanteras in advance. So uh, I'm Piyush from GMAT Vez, and I would love to know more about you guys. So please feel free to let me know uh, what is your current score, where are you from, what is the target score that you're looking at, and I'll be more than happy to help. And then in this webinar, it's going to be very, very important for those people who are struggling with verbal, who want to look at that verbal 40 plus score, who want to look at that the verbal score starting with a 4 actually. So if you're looking at that, you are in the right place and we are going to discuss about that. But feel free to let me know more about yourself. I'll be more than happy to know. So just want to see what kind of scores you are right now at, what kind of scores you are targeting. So feel free to interact at any point of time. So now, why is this webinar important? Why, like most of you know that already, like verbal is a big pain point for a lot of non-native speakers when it comes to mastering the GMAT or scoring 700 plus. Now, I can actually relate to it really, really well because I am someone who has struggled with verbal a lot. In fact, I still remember when I actually started my GMAT prep, it was I was not really doing well on verbal. My first ever score on the GMAT verbal test was just a 13 percentile. It was that bad. I really, really struggled big time with verbal. In fact, I always used to see my scores fluctuate regularly between the score range of 25 to 70%. That was the thing that used to happen with me. In some tests, I was getting a 725%. In some tests, I was having a 70%. The scores were always different. And I always, after completing the test, I always used to pray to God that please give me a good score at least this time. I was never confident about my verbal skills. And I actually struggled big time, but in the end, I was able to improve my verbal score to a 41, which was 93 percentile in my first ever GMAT attempt. So why did I say this? I said this because I can actually relate to most of the problems that you guys might be facing. And I'm going to share not just what worked for me, what has worked for so many people who I have worked with and helped improve their scores to a 7. So I'm going to talk about all of that. I'm going to cover all of that in depth. And I'm so happy to hear from you guys. I can see that a good number of you are actually targeting a 720, 740 kind of a score. And a good number of you are already at a decent level, 600 plus mostly. And some of you are at a 680, some of you are at a 690 also. But primarily seems that all of you require a verbal score improvement. So don't worry, you are in the right place. So let me actually talk quickly about what are the common concerns that I'm going to take care of today. And these are some of the concerns that I hear from students. These are some of the concerns that I had as a student when I was preparing. And I'm going to talk about all of them today. I'm going to cover all of them and solve all of them for you today. The first thing which I felt as a student was a very big challenge for me in many cases was that I always used to get stuck with two close choices in the end. So I learned this neat thing called answer choice elimination, which helped me eliminate three answer choices, but I was always stuck with those last two, and I was never sure which one of them is the right answer. I was really facing this issue big time when I was a student. The second concern, which I kind of hear from a lot of people, and in fact I also faced myself, was that there is no time limit, I can pretty much solve questions accurately. But when it comes to solving the question within 2 minutes, that's when I start struggling. Another thing, again, I also face, and I hear it very often from other people, is that when I score, like when I solve official guide questions, I score 80% plus in them, but my scores in mocks is not that good. Okay, in fact, Mudit was saying that I'm struggling with verbal. I'm unable to cover all the questions at the given time. At least 5 questions I have to skip in the end. So yeah, mock scores are not as good, but in practice, official guide practice, I'm getting good scores. And please feel free to say yay or nay on this points. If you actually have these concerns, please feel free to let me know. Like if you have any of these concerns, which I mentioned on the screen. Another question that I hear from a concern I hear from a lot of people is, I've studied everything, but I'm not still able to break the V30 barrier. I'm not able to break that. I'm just around that mark. I don't know why I'm not able to improve. I've been preparing for quite some time now. I've stressed a lot. I have done 2 months, 3 months of practice, but I'm still at the same level. I'm not able to see any improvement whatsoever. And another common concern I hear from students is, I actually struggle with unfamiliar genres. If you're an engineer, probably that's the social sciences or philosophy for you. But for some people, it's economics, some people it's business, some people it's sciences. Again, people say that I'm struggling with that. Otherwise, I'm fine. I generally struggle with that. Mitesh agrees that these are some of the problems that Mitesh also faces. And trust me, these are some of the most common concerns I hear from students who are struggling with verbal. Now I'm going to talk about all of them today. And how I've structured this webinar is, the first and foremost thing that we need to actually take care of is understand what is the core problem. Trust me, my friends, this problem solution is all about problem identification. Most people do not really know. Most people who are struggling, in fact, when I was a student, when I was going through the same phase, I was struggling not with verbal. I was actually struggling to identify the core problem. I was wasting a lot of time on something that was not my core problem, and because of that, my all my effort was going to waste. So the most and critical thing that we need to do is understand the core problem, and that's the first point we're going to start with. And please be with me. And I can see that almost all of you say that I relate to the situations that are mentioned here, right? So we're going to talk about the core problem that leads to these problems, that leads to these situations, rather, that leads to these outcomes. Okay, so we need to understand that first. We'll start with that. Then we will actually talk about the solution to overcome the score plateau. So if you hit a score plateau of like 30, 31 in verbal, if you're not able to improve your score beyond that, don't worry, we are going to talk about how can you overcome the score plateau as well overall. Okay, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the solution to this problem, and then we will talk about how can you master the solution. See, knowing the solution is just one part of it. You need to then master the solution also in order to get to the level that you want to achieve. So it's also important to master the solution. So we'll talk about how can you do that. And finally, we'll take all these things into account to create a study strategy to improve your score to verbal 40. So we'll talk about how should you strategize, how should you create a study plan to get to that target score. And in the end, I'm going to open it up for a Q&A, open-ended Q&A. So you can feel free to ask me any questions that you might have around your performance, around your scores, around anything that you want to ask. I open it up for the Q&A. Okay, so that's how the structure is. So yeah, so let's get started. Now, in order to understand the core problem, what I'm going to do is I'm going to act as old Piyush, the same guy who actually uh, scored a 13 percentile on his first ever verbal test on GMAT. I'm going to act as old Piyush. I'm going to tell you how I used to solve questions. And from there, we'll be able to see exactly what is the main problem, why people struggle. And in order to do so, what I have done here is I'm going to give you a, a official guide question to solve. Okay. And I'm going to solve that question as old Piyush first. But before I solve, I want you guys to take a shot at this question. So here's the question on your screen right now. And I want you guys to take a minute, maybe 2 minutes also if needed. Solve this question at your end. Do not post the responses in the comments here. And after 2 minutes are over, I will myself ask you guys to post your responses. And once you post your responses, once I ask you to post your responses, you can post your responses, and then I will start solving this question. Okay? So all the best for this question. You guys have a couple of minutes to solve it. And make sure that you don't post the responses unless I ask you to do so. All right? So I'll be muted for a couple of minutes, guys. All the best. Okay, guys, so 2 minutes are almost over now. You can put down your responses in the comments here. I would like to see what is the correct answer as per you. Okay, so I'm giving you about 15-20 seconds to put down your responses, and then I'm going to start solving this question as old Piyush would have done. And then from there, we'll understand what is the core problem, why you might be struggling with verbal, why most people struggle with verbal. Okay, some responses from you. All right, I already see some people writing. I think a good number of you are going for C, good number of you are going for A. So Deepan, Shayantan, Antariksh go for A. Akshay also goes for A. Pooja says it's B. Gagan says it's B. Then Lily Chan, Sai Kiran, Mitesh are going for C. Okay, so a lot of people are going for A, B, and C. These three seem to be the popular ones. No one for D and E. What about D and E, guys? No one for D and E. No one thinks that is right. Mm-hmm. Okay, still ABCs only. All right. So good number of responses. Some of you might have done this question earlier. This is an official guide question. I saw one person going for D. Yep. Let's see who was that. Varsha, I guess. Yeah. So Varsha was going for D. Kazi is saying C. Vishal also says D. Okay. Okay. Good, guys. So happy to see your responses. So now I'm gonna actually solve this question as I would have done it when I was at your I was starting my studies when I was very new and when I was struggling with GMAT. So I'm gonna act as old Piyush now, and then I'm gonna solve the same question as I would do today. Okay, so let's see the transition. Let's see how it is different, and you guys can actually understand what is the core problem from that. Okay, so let's see. So the first thing that I used to do was I used to read the question quickly. So let me do it. Scientists have recently discovered what could be the largest and oldest living organism on Earth, a giant fungus that is an interwoven filigree of mushrooms and root like tentacles spawned by a single fertilized spore 10,000 years ago and extending for 30 acres in the soil of a Michigan forest. So initially, when I used to solve sentence correction question, it was more about what sounds right to my ears. And when I used to look at this question, when I read this question, I would have felt that okay, spawned is a word which goes with the fungus. Extending is another word which seems to be parallel with spawned. So ideally, it should be spawned and extended. Basically, that sounds correct. That at least sounds better than spawned and extending. So that would have been my first guess. But with time, I actually learned another approach called the splits approach. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are aware of it. If anyone of you is aware of splits approach, feel free to share it in the comments. Uh, those of you who are not aware of the splits approach, I'll quickly tell you what the split approach say. So splits approach is all about focusing on the option choices, seeing the splits in the option choice, basically seeing the point of differences from the options and ensuring that you focus, you understand what is the grammar rule that is tested according to those splits, and look at the original sentence and see which rule will be applicable there. Okay, so that's how splits approach works. So I actually learned the splits approach as old Piyush itself, and I felt that okay, this is really good. This is something which can actually give direction to my way of solving question. And I started following splits approach. So let me solve it using the splits approach. Again, this is not how I do it today, but this is the second stage where I reached after the first stage of just going by what sounds right to my ears. Okay, so let's try the splits approach here. So when I look at the options, I actually see all the options giving me different variants of the same word, which is extend. Okay, so the second option, for example, in this case is a simple present tense form of the word extend. It says extends. It's a simple present tense form of the word. The third option in this case is a simple past tense form of the word. Okay, the third one is the fourth one rather is basically the simple past tense with a subject. Okay, and the last one is a present continuous tense form. Now the first one, which is in the original choice, I'm not sure what it is. Seems like a present continuous form, but not really sure about what it is. Okay, so when I look at the splits, I know that I have to focus on the right tense form. I have to focus on identifying what is the right tense that works in this particular question. Okay, Okay, so that's what I understand. So I would like to now read the question from the understanding of the tense and see which tense form works best. So let's see. A giant fungus, that is interwoven filigree of mushrooms and root-like tentacles, spawned by a single fertilized spore some 10,000 years ago. So I'm talking about something which has happened in the past here. So spawned makes things fine, and extending for more than 30 acres in the soil of a Michigan forest. Now, when I look at extending for more than 30 acres, this seems to tell me this seems to be something which probably has already happened. So not sure, maybe simple past tense, something which has already happened. We use simple past tense for that. And at the same time, it seems like something which is a property. It's like somewhere a fact about that fungus, that the fungus still extends for more than 30 acres in the soil of a Michigan forest. So maybe simple present makes sense. Not really sure, like which tense should I use. I'm not sure, like it means probably to extend. It's still extending. Is it a fact? Is it something like event that has already happened? So I'm a little confused, honestly, and this is basically how I would have done it earlier. So I'm not sure whether B or C is the correct answer. I could have gone for any of one of them. And let me show you guys what was the accuracy, like most popular choices in this data from GMAT Club. This is an official question. I have pulled out data from GMAT Club from thousands of attempts till date. 30% of the students end up marking choice B as the answer. 17% of students end up marking C as the answer. These are the two very popular choices. I won't say most popular, but these are two very popular choices. And a good number of people go for E as well. They might think that, okay, the fungus is still extending. But in reality, the right answer is option A. The right answer is option A. It is not B, it is not C, it is not E either. Okay. But if you focus on splits, you are bound to make a mistake. There is a very, very high chance that you might end up making a mistake because you're only thinking about the right tense form, and A probably is not really denoting a tense. So a lot of people will actually eliminate that one option. Now, what is the problem? What is wrong with this approach? Again, this is a very, very common and very, very popular approach. Very many people actually use this approach very often when they solve questions. So what is wrong with this methodology? What is the problem with this methodology altogether? Now, the main reason why I actually adopted this method long back was simple. The idea was that I needed to save time. GMAT gives me just 2 minutes to solve a question. Gives me just 2 minutes to solve a question, and I know that, in fact, it's slightly less than 2 minutes, 1.8 minutes actually. So I know that in order to get the CR and RC questions correct, which are slightly longer in length, I need to cut down on my time on sentence correction. Because of which, I always used to focus on methods which can help me solve a question quickly. Now, when we actually follow a methodology which helps you save time, which helps you solve questions quickly, at many places, we actually do not focus on the logical aspect of the sentence. And what we need to understand on a test like GMAT, which is a very logical test, think of it like this. This is a test which is conducted to actually assess future managers, people who are going to do their MBAs. Now, why does a manager need to be good at grammar? Why do you need to be good at grammar? You can ask that question. GMAT basically tests you on your communication skills, not on your grammar skills. They are testing you on how logically can you communicate, how clearly can you communicate, so that whenever someone reads an argument written by you or a sentence written by you, they're able to get to the same understanding without any ambiguity. That's what they're testing you on. So if you focus on methodologies which are not focusing on the logical aspects of things, you're actually trading your timing for accuracy, your accuracy for timing. Basically, you're trading your accuracy to save time. But what you need to understand is accuracy is always more important than time. GMAT is not going to reward you for saving time or completing the test on time. It is going to reward you for getting the questions right. And that is something which I never understood. When I was doing it earlier, I felt that I have to save time, and I used to continuously use this approach from one question to another. I always felt that, okay, this time I made a silly mistake. I just missed this part. I should not have done that. Next time I will probably be more cautious. I will not miss it. But my methodology remained the same for quite a long time, and I was expecting a different result. Now, please feel free to tell me how many of you are actually going through the same thing. You are using a methodology. Like when you get a question wrong, you say that, okay, probably this time it was a silly mistake. This was a silly error. Next time I'm not going to make it because I know how I made this error, why I made this error. So next time onwards, probably I'm not going to make the same error. So how many of you actually feel the same way? I would like to see some responses from you guys. And I guess there's a lag. I'm seeing your responses after a minute or so. So I'll actually move forward in the meantime. But I would like to know if actually what I'm saying here makes sense. You guys also felt it, because I definitely felt it as a student. Now, the problem with this entire thing is, if you're not focusing on the right methodology, you save time and your accuracy suffers. But in most cases, you will be stuck with too close choices. Okay. And the problem with getting stuck with too close choices is, when we get stuck with too close choices, we tell ourselves that, yeah, we were almost there. We were almost there. It was just this much by I missed. And this is a very common comment that I hear from students all the time, that when I actually take the mock test, I am able to come down to 2 questions, but it's just this much that I miss. Now, what is the problem with this? What is the problem with getting stuck with too close choices? And let me be very direct here, guys. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I have done this myself. And this is one of the biggest traps that we set for ourselves. The trap is called the best choice trap. When we get stuck with too close choices in verbal, we tell ourselves that this is in GMAT verbal, we are supposed to find the best choice. What we tell ourselves that there are 2 possible right answers. The ones that I got stuck with, let's say you marked the wrong one, we end up telling ourselves that it is possible for this answer to be correct. It's just that the second one is better than this. It is the best option possible in out of the ones which are there. Now, how many of you tell yourself that? How many of you tell yourself that? And I see a lot of yeses and absolutely for the previous question that I asked, that which was about getting stuck with the same choices, same process, and telling yourself that this was a silly mistake. But what about this? What about the best choice trap? How many of you feel that? And please be honest with me. When I ask this question in my other webinars, the usual response that I get from students is about 90% of them say, yes, I actually do this. What we tell ourselves is that the problem is not with me. The problem is with verbal itself. Verbal is subjective at the end of the day. It's not objective as quant is. And that's why I'm getting stuck with 2 choices. One is right. It's not like one is right or one is wrong. It's more like it is possible for both of them to be correct. It's just that one of them is better than the other. How many of you feel that? So I see on my second screen, I can see some responses already. So Modit is saying, I feel that quite often. Pooja says yes. Okay. So that is happening with you guys. Okay. What about others? So Modit says quite often. Okay. So yeah, so this is one thing which a lot of us do. And the sooner you accept what I want to say next, the better it is for you. GMAT as a test is a very, very logical test. All the questions on GMAT are highly standardized, and then there are never 2 right answers. There's always 1 right answer and 4 wrong answers. There are no gray areas whatsoever. Trust me, guys, the entire webinar that is going to be there after this is going to be waste if you don't accept this as a fact. The moment you tell yourself that you are stuck with 2 close choices and both of them could be correct, you are actually closing the door of learning. There is no way you can actually improve from there. You can only learn if you keep an open mind, saying that, yeah, there is only 1 right answer and 4 wrong answers. I need to understand why I made that mistake. And you need to understand that. Always remember, whenever you are marking the wrong answer, you're stuck with 2 close choices, you're not making just 1 silly mistake, you're making 2 mistakes. You're accepting something that is wrong and you are rejecting something that is right. You're missing something that is right. So it is giving you 2 opportunities. If you approach the question in a logical manner, you are not going to make this error. Now, I'm sure a lot of you might be thinking, okay, Piyush is giving a lot of GAN around all the strategies. But what about approaching it the right way? What is the solution to this? Okay, we understand the problem. Like you told me that, okay, you're focusing on shortcuts, you're focusing on splits, whatever. you're stuck with the two close choices trap, but how do you solve the question so that I don't get stuck with those two close choices? Now, trust me, guys, the only solution for this is to follow the right method. Focus on this word, guys. Focus on this word, the right method. Okay. And let me change the color of my pen to actually indicate this over here. Focus on this word, the right method. You should not be following a shortcut driven method. You need to follow a logical method, the method that works for every single question. Okay, that is the most important thing. If you follow the right method, you will never ever get stuck with two close choices. You will never face that problem. Trust my words. And when I actually learned the right method, it changed my entire story. I was able to see a significant improvement. I ended up scoring a 740 with a verbal 41, and my trajectory was simple. For going forward, it was exponentially improving after that. So let me tell you now, how do I approach the same question? How would I approach the same question today as new Piyush? What is the methodical approach that I follow? And I want you guys to focus on the solution, the way that I'm approaching it, and try and understand what is the difference that you see. And I want you guys to note, like put down your thoughts in the comments here. I would love to see if you're able to understand the difference, if you're able to spot the difference in the approach. Okay, so let me get started. So now how I approach the question is I focus on contextualizing the sentence. Okay, now I'm not using a term which a lot of you might have heard, but I'm going to come to that. My focus is on contextualizing every single element of the sentence, understanding what is the role played by them, and asking whether what is communicated is logical or not. In simple terms, that's known as the meaning-based approach. But most people don't use the meaning-based approach the way it is supposed to be used. You need to contextualize everything as you read, and you need to read it by breaking it into small parts. You should not be reading it as a whole. Okay, so let me do that now. Let me try doing it. Scientists have recently discovered. Okay, so something has been recently discovered by scientists. I don't know why, what, but let me read further to understand. And I'm thinking out loud. I'm speaking out loud exactly how I'm gonna do when I'm reading this sentence for the first time. So scientists have recently discovered what could be the largest and oldest living organism on Earth. So okay, so the sentence is telling me about a recent discovery, and this discovery is about the largest and oldest living organism on Earth. So maybe the sentence is gonna talk more about that organism. Let's see. A giant fungus. Okay. So most likely this organism is the giant fungus itself. Maybe, again, I'm not sure yet, but it seems like that. Let's read further. That is an interwoven filigree of mushrooms and root-like tentacles. Okay, so what is an interwoven filigree? What is this that referring to? This that is referring to a fungus. So this sentence tells me that scientists have discovered something about the largest and oldest living organism on Earth. Then I get to know about a fungus. Okay, I don't know whether it is that organism. Most likely it is, but I don't know that yet. And this sentence, that is an interwoven filigree of mushroom and root-like tentacles, gives me additional information about that fungus. That this fungus is nothing but an interwoven filigree of mushrooms and root-like tentacles. This is how it is made of. Let's read further. Spawned by a single fertilized spore some 10,000 years ago. Now, what is this spawn telling me? Now, if I focus on the logical aspect of the sentence again, try to focus on the logical part. Spawned by a single fertilized spore some 10,000 years ago. I'm talking about something spawned 10,000 years ago, and try to relate it with the oldest living organism. Okay, try to relate it with the oldest living organism, which is basically told by told by the author in the previous part of the sentence, that scientists have recently discovered what could be the oldest living organism, and this part is actually relating to that. So if I look at them from the meaning standpoint, this spawned is basically talking about the fungus. It is telling me additional information about the fungus, that this fungus was spawned by a single fertilized spore some 10,000 years ago. So this tells me about the oldest living organism part, and extending for more than 30 acres in the soil of a Michigan forest. Now, what is extending? Obviously, it is the fungus which is extending. And when I say more than 30,000 acres in the soil of a Michigan forest, this is basically talking about the largest aspect. This tells me about the largest aspect right now. Okay, so if I look at the entire sentence, the sentence tells me about a discovery, recent discovery of scientists about the largest and oldest living organism on Earth, which is a giant fungus. This giant fungus, that is an interwoven filigree of mushrooms and tentacles. This is an additional information about it. And then there are two parts, two modifiers, two additional pieces of information about this fungus, which basically tells me more about this fungus, why this fungus is the largest and oldest living organism on Earth. Okay. Now, when I actually do this, I also do one more thing. Now, whenever so right now I'm at a very advanced stage of this meaning-based approach. Okay. I'll answer your question with it. Don't worry about it. I'm right now at a very advanced stage of the meaning-based approach. But when I was in the initial phases, I used to do something called a pause point approach. Now, what is this pause point approach? It basically says that you have to stop at relevant pause points, and then you have to actually ask yourself the right set of questions to contextualize the sentence. Now, what are the various pause points? One is verbs or verb-like words. Okay. Whenever you see a verb-like word, you need to stop and ask whether it is a verb or a modifier. And if it is a verb, what is the subject? If it is a modifier, what is it modifying? Another thing is relative pronouns. You need to stop at relative pronouns and ask yourself, what are the relative pronouns modifying? Then connectors, and then contextual words, basically. These are some of the pause points. So when I used to actually solve these questions initially, I used to actually stop at all these pause points to help me contextualize the sentence better. Okay. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this word spawn. This is a verb-like word. This is a very important word that a good number of people confuse themselves with. Okay, so let's understand this one, and I see some questions around that as well. So let's ask the question: is the fungus doing the action of spawning? Okay, try to understand this. Is the fungus doing the action of spawning? See, whenever you see a word which is ed verbal, okay, whenever you see a word that is ed verbal, okay, ed word like ed verb form, you need to clearly understand whether it is a verb or a modifier. You need to clearly understand that. There's a simple test to do that. You need to make sure that the subject which it seems to assign itself to, whether it is doing the action or not. If it is not doing the action, then it is definitely not a verb form. Because if fungus is doing the action of spawning, the sentence should have been the fungus was spawned by. Okay, right? If the fungus was doing the action of, like, some fungus is not doing the action of spawning. So if I want to write the sentence using spawned as a verb form, I should be writing fungus was spawned by. Now, since I'm not writing as fungus was spawned by, the spawned word over here is actually acting as a modifier. Okay. Remember, when ed verb forms are not, like, all ed verb forms are not verbs, they can be modifiers. And the easiest way to understand it is, if the word that they're associated with is the doer of the action, then it is definitely a verb. If it is not the doer of the action, then it is a modifier. That's one easy way to identify that. So in this case, spawned is not a verb, it is a modifier. And since spawned is not a verb, it is a modifier, then extending, which is basically parallel with spawned, should also be a modifier. It should never be a verb. Remember, spawned is in the non-underlined portion. So that is correct. There's no doubt about that. So spawned is not a verb. Spawned is a modifier. Definitely extending should also be a modifier. Okay, remember that. And I saw a few questions around spawned and tentacles. Don't worry, I'll definitely answer that as well. But try and understand this. If you understand this part, you will be very clear in this case that extending has to be a modifier. It cannot be a verb. And if you look at the options all together, you will see that there's only one modifier in the entire in the 5 option choices, which is extending over here. And there's no problem with this. Extending is a modifier, is an ing verbal modifier, which tells us more about that fungus. Okay. Now, I would like to know from you guys, what do you think is the difference in the approach? What do you think is the difference in the approach from what I used to do earlier to what I'm doing now? Okay, and in the meantime, I'll answer the question on tentacles, like why spawned is not related to tentacles. So understand it this way, guys, that in this case, spawned is, if you look at the entire sentence, spawned by a single fertilized spore some 10,000 years ago. it has to talk about the fungus because we are talking about a living organism on earth, which is the oldest living organism. Okay, think of it this way. How can tentacles be an oldest living organism? Doesn't make sense. It has to be fungus. And spawn is talking about that part. It's telling us why it is the fungus, why the fungus is the oldest living organism on earth. Try to contextualize stuff. Okay, extended can also be ed modifier. So think of it like this. When I say a giant fungus extended for more than 30 acres, the fungus is doing the action of extending, right? So it cannot, in this case, extended cannot be a ed modifier. It has to be a verb. Think of it this way. Vrushal, extended is a verb form. Extended is not a modifier, and we need a modifier in this case. Okay. Okay. So good. I see some of you writing. Mudit says it's a little more structured. So yeah. So that's what I wanted you guys to understand. That basically, whenever you look at a question, you need to approach the question in a methodical way. You cannot just go about focusing on shortcuts or splits or things like that, because those will not help you for 700 level questions, for the difficult questions. For the simpler questions, it might help you get the answer quickly, but otherwise it will not. Okay, so a lot of you are still stuck with extended. So Kazi, extended cannot fulfill the parallelism. Think of it. A modifier can be parallel to a modifier. A verb cannot be parallel to a modifier. Okay, so remember that always. Extended will act as a verb form. A giant fungus extended for more than 30 acres. In this case, when you say a giant fungus extended, it's basically acting as a verb. It is not a modifier anymore. Okay, don't just go behind what sounds right. Understand the logical aspect of it also. Now, another question I have, Ozalf is saying, if both are modifiers, isn't it going to be a run-on sentence? Not really, Ozalf. The entire thing, a giant fungus, this part spawned by, let me write it properly, spawned by and extended for, this is flexible modifier. Okay, flexible modifier. What is the structure of a flexible modifier? It has one entity which is a noun, okay, and another entity that is a noun modifier, which is actually modifying that particular noun. So this is not a run-on sentence. This is actually a simple structure which is accepted on GMAT. Basically, this giant fungus is modifying this largest and oldest living organism on earth. Okay, so a flexible modifier is a sentence can be structured like this: a clause followed by a flexible modifier. In the flexible modifier, you will have a noun plus a noun modifier. Okay, this noun will modify an element in the clause or the entire clause itself, and this noun modifier will modify the noun. So in the flexible modifier, you don't need to have a subject and verb pair. Remember that part. Okay, great, guys. So now basically when I talk about this methodology, what you need to understand is that in verbal, generally we don't have an habit of following a method. We generally focus on applying the rules in a random way. In fact, when I speak to students, I generally speak to 4 to 5 students every single day, and I commonly see this as a problem. Most of the people actually think of like read the sentence in one go itself without pausing, without having a proper approach towards thinking about the meaning part of it, and that's why they struggle. And the main reason behind that is most likely the way we have learned verbal. I'm talking about mainly non-native speakers of the language. The way we have learned verbal in school is very different from the way we have learned quant. Now, when it comes to quant, we have always learned how to apply the concepts along with the concepts. For example, if I ask you guys to solve this set of linear equations for me, how will you guys solve this set of linear equations? How will you solve this linear equation? The set of linear equations. Tell me, guys. I would like to see some comments from you. Okay, I'll wait for a few responses from you. How do you solve this equation for x and y? Let's see some responses from you guys. And Vivek, again, I understand your question, but see, my objective today is to focus on the strategy, not just to solve that particular question. So don't worry if you have doubts related to that. I'll take it up in the Q&A part of the webinar. Don't worry about that as of now. Okay, I see some responses. Mudit says substitution or elimination. Okay, Mudit, good. What about the others? What do you think is the right method to solve? How will you go about solving this question? Okay. Anyone else than Mudit? What do you guys think? How will you solve it? Okay, Abdullah or Ali is that. Okay, so Abdullah says it's really obvious. What is the surprising thing with that? This is how everyone does it, right? That's what I wanted to communicate. See, whenever you see a set of linear equations, you are taught in school that first step of solving this equation is to equate the coefficients of one of the variables, which is easier to equate. So most likely you guys will equate the coefficient of the second, like x, use multiplying the second equation by 2. And then most likely you will eliminate x by subtracting the two equations to get the value of y. And the moment you get the value of y, you will actually replace the value or substitute the value to get the value of x. Now, whenever I give you a set of two linear equations, you are always and always going to use these three steps. Always going to use these three steps, and you're always going to get to the right answer. Okay, that's how we tackle quant. And I'm just taking an example. I can take tons of different examples where we will see that, okay, in quant, we always use a methodical approach. We go step by step, applying that approach, and we end up with the right answer. You're never confused about the right answer in quant. But what happens with verbal? In verbal, people don't follow the same method. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about RC now. So I have talked about SC, how I used to solve SC, and why splits does not work in every case. Now let's talk about RC. Now, when I was a student, when I started studying RC, I still remember it was a nightmare for me. I used to get a lot of questions wrong. I was never sure why the answers are correct. And there was a lot of fluctuation in my scores. Now, now when I look back at it, I understand what was the problem. But when I was a student, I came to hear about multiple approaches, and I tried everything, every possible method. And some of the most popular approaches that I heard of is what I'm going to talk to you guys about. And then I'll tell you why this does not work and why you need to change it to something else. Okay, so the first approach that I heard was you need to read the first and the last line of every para. Read the first line properly and the last line properly. That pretty much gives you an idea what is there in each para, and jump to the questions. When you read the question, you come back to the relevant para and read the para properly to get the answer, because you don't need to waste your time on something which is not being asked properly. And this is the first approach which I heard, and I tried to follow that approach. And if you focus, and please tell me what is the core principle behind the first approach. If you guys have been attending this webinar closely, you would have probably understood what is the core principle behind this first approach. But I would love to hear from you. What do you think is the core principle behind this first approach? Over here. Okay, please feel free to write in the comments. And I have some delay here, so I'll probably look at the responses later on. But tell me, why do you think people focus on this approach? Let me know that. The second approach, and I actually moved to the second method, the second approach which I heard, and this is something which I stuck to for quite a long time. And the approach that I followed was read the passage quickly in 2 minutes. Read it as soon as possible, basically. Skim through the passage, take a mental note of what lies where. Treat it like a geography map, and basically understand which information is present, and refer back to the passage for every single question. Skim through the passage, understand where things lie, where are things, and then come back to them, come back to the passage, refer to the passage for every single question. That's basically the second approach that I understood, that I learned. I stuck to this approach for quite some time. This helped me a little, no doubt about it, but still did not get me the outcome that I desired. Now, I see some responses for the first approach. People are saying that it's for time saving. Abdullah and Benny says it's for time saving. Mudit says to get a gist of the passage. Laurent says the same thing, good for main ideas and purpose questions, but not for specific detail type question. Okay. Vishal also says to get idea about paras. Okay. Let me tell you the first approach. Why this is the first, the main principle behind the first and even the second approach is time saving itself. It says that if you don't need to waste time reading everything, just focus on reading the relevant parts. Now, I'm not saying that these approaches are wasteful. I am not saying that, but they do not work for more than 90% people. And I'll tell you why they do not work for more than 90% people. And the third approach which I heard was, again, I tried this for some time, but it did not work for me, was to read the question first so you know what you are looking for. Now, none of these approaches work because one of the core principles that these approaches follow is that basically uh, GMAT RCs are focused on details. That's one core principle which is there behind all these approaches. Now, if you follow any of these approaches, you will face this some of these common problems in RC. You will actually see yourself confused about the meaning. You'll only have a roundabout idea of what you have read. If it is from your comfortable genre, it will still be better, but it will not still be as good. And if it is from an uncomfortable genre, then God save you. Basically, there's a very less likelihood that you will have a clear understanding of what is the meaning. In that case, you would need to refer back to the passage multiple times, and the final outcome is going to be bad, because when you are going to mark the answer, since you have spent a lot of time and you have a just a roundabout idea, you will have low confidence when you're marking the answers. Now, why this does not work on GMAT RC? One simple reason: 85% of GMAT questions are inferential in nature. And when I say inferential in nature, I basically mean questions like inference, main point, function, structure, application. All these question types combined together account for about 85% of the questions that you are going to get on reading comprehension in GMAT. Now, when you are going to get reading comprehension, like inferential questions, and you focus on what is written, or you focus on skimming through the passage, you are not reading between the lines. You are not drawing the right inferences. What you're doing is you're locating where the information lies. And the problem with this kind of approach is that in 700 level questions, most likely the inference that is going to be tested is not going to be a local inference. It is going to be a global inference. What I mean by global inference is something which can only be derived by relating multiple parts of the passage at one go, maybe related to multiple paragraphs as well. If you are just going back and referring to a relevant part, you are probably gonna fall for a trap. And GMAT will smartly put one option choice which will actually be very close to what is written and what is true per one para. And there will be some part of it which will be a distortion or scope extension or whatever. You will not worry about that as much because you will find that information in the part that you're going to read up. But if you're not focusing on the global inference, you will definitely get stuck with this. So remember, when you actually see the approach, like the question types, what does the question type say? They say which of the following is the author most likely to agree with? What is the function of the word Renaissance in the first para? Which of the following is against the author's opinion? So in most of these cases, it is talking about why the author has written something. What is the function? Why? And what we focus on when we generally focus on any of the other approaches is the what part of it. So GMAT tests on why, and if you focus on what is written only, then you are not gonna get the desired outcome that you are supposed to achieve. Okay. So it is very, very important. And I see a good comment from Mudit. Mudit says, I used to follow the third approach, but then I shifted to proper reading and understanding the passage, and it really elevated my performance in RC. However, I still face inaccuracies in inferences. So Mudit, it's good that your performance has improved. Again, remember one thing, guys, and this is a part of my webinar as well. It is not just enough to know what is the right method. So right now, Mudit, you know that method, you're learning that method. You need to master that method as well. The moment you master that methodology, this inaccuracies will actually reduce automatically. Okay, I'm going to talk about that, don't worry, in a short while. So how should you approach a GMAT RC question? And this is something which Mudit touched upon, so let me elaborate on that. So the right way to do that is involved and evolved reading. You need to involve yourself. You need to place yourself in the shoes of the author to understand why exactly the basically the entire passage is written. Okay, so think like the author, understand the author's point of view. Why has he written that passage? Because on GMAT, every passage is there for a particular reason. Okay, every passage which is showed on GMAT is written for a particular reason, a purpose. So try to understand the author's point of view. And how do you do that? In order to do that, you have to break the sentences into small chunks to derive the meaning clearly. Okay, now it is very important for especially passages which are not from a comfortable genre. You need to break down the sentences into small chunks to derive the meaning of every single part, understand the intent behind each sentence, and you can only do that when you actually try to relate back to the previous sentence to understand how the two sentences are related properly. Okay, so always try to relate back the sentence that you read to the previous sentence in order to contextualize things better. Because if you try to do this, if you focus on doing this, you'll be able to understand what the author is actually trying to tell you. Okay, you'll be able to understand the author's intent very closely. And in order to do this, transition words and conjunctions help really well. Because if you focus on transition words and conjunctions, they will make your life much more easy. They will make it much more simpler for you to relate back the meaning. And once you are doing all this, you need to continuously summarize the entire discussion that you had and write down it in form of a summary of each para. Now you don't need to write down big summaries. You can take mental notes. For example, today I take maybe I just write down 4 or 5 notes words for each para, but you need to summarize the response, the reason, the purpose of each para that you read. Okay, that is very important. Okay, now this is an approach which is very crucial for actually getting the RCs right. This is the approach that I started following to get the RCs right. Now tell me, how many of you are feeling that this approach is not gonna work? This approach seems to be too time consuming. I'm not really sure if this is gonna work out for me because it seems like too time consuming. Let me know in the comments here. Okay, I'll wait for a few responses to come in. Okay, Abdullah says there's always a shift in author's language. The moment you find the keywords which express the opinions of the author, you'll find which direction the message is heading. Great, Abdullah. That is one of the very important lessons that I actually learned big time, and actually changed my entire approach towards RCs and my scores as well. So definitely, you need to be very cautious about where the author is steering the discussion, and that actually holds the key to score well on GMAT RC. Okay, so tell me, guys, how many of you are thinking that this approach is really time consuming? Seems fine, but do we have enough time to do this on GMAT? Okay, yet to see responses from you guys in the comments. I guess there could be a delay as well. Okay, so in terms of time, let's move forward. I'll actually take up your responses once they come. So basically, what people think is when they get the hard questions wrong, they actually try to analyze why do they get the hard questions wrong. And most people feel that I can solve if I have enough time to solve the question. That's what most people feel. Now, when they start thinking that, the next question that comes to their mind is, how do I solve these questions quickly? Since I can get when I'm not under time pressure, when I'm solving them normally, generally when I'm solving them, how do I'm getting it right? So if I have to solve the hard questions, I only need to make sure that I should solve them quickly. Okay, that's what people think. Now, how do you solve quickly? When people start thinking about solving quickly, the first thing that they do is they cut corners while reading the question. Okay, that's one common thing which people think about. Okay, and they do. I also have done that. I also have cut corners on reading the question because I have to eliminate the answer choices. So what people think is the answer is in the choices, so let's spend time there. And what they fail to realize is that this is where their main problem starts. And let's see how. Okay, now the moment you actually read the question stem quickly, now this is true for everything, which is true for SC, CR, or RC, all the areas. The moment you read the question stem quickly, you do save time. You definitely save time. But the thing that happens at the same time is you only have a rough understanding of what's being stated. You only have a rough understanding of what's being stated. Okay, you don't have a very clear understanding of what's being stated, and because of this rough understanding, you're able to eliminate 2 or 3 choices confidently, but you get stuck eventually with the last 2 3 close choices. You will get stuck with the last 2 3 close choices, and when you get stuck with the last 2 3 close choices, what is that you do? Can anyone tell me what is that they do? Okay, I'll wait for the responses. In the meantime, let me take up some responses. Mudit says, to be honest, sometimes I feel I'm taking time, but suppose I take 4 minutes in reading, it helps saving time for further questions. Good point, Mudit. Actually, this is what I wanted to communicate. So I'm going to come to this. Vivek says, yes, I've been using this approach and scoring well on RC. It's time saving also. Takes around 3-4 minutes to reading the passage, but then does not take much time while answering. Good. I'm so happy, Vivek, you are also doing this. This is really good, guys. Laurent saying, I'm running out of time at the end of verbal. So, Laurent, one possible reason is what I'm stating here. Okay. So, Benny says, I guess when I'm stuck with 2-3 close choices, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So, some people guess. And there's another thing with a lot of people do is they reread the question stem or the choices multiple times before guessing. And in the end, it's you end up marking some answer as time is running out. So in the outcome is maybe a guess, maybe one of the two choices that you feel is more correct. But you go through this entire cycle. You go through this entire cycle of rereading stuff. Now, if I actually plot the time spent on each and every part, you'll be able to see what's happening here. See, when you read the question quickly, you are able to do that in 20-30 seconds. You're able to save some time doing this. Definitely, you're saving 20-30 seconds there. Okay, definitely you're saving some time there. But what happens is you are able to eliminate 2 to 3 choices confidently in 20-30 seconds. There also, till this point, you are good. But the moment you get stuck with 2-3 choices, you're gonna spend 20-30 seconds, which is the time you should have spent on eliminating the answers. But since you are not sure what is the answer, you will end up rereading. And the moment you end up rereading stuff, you will end up losing 60-90 seconds easily. So not just have lost the time that you saved in step 1 over here, you have actually spent more time on the question stem than you should have spent, because you have done it multiple times, you have read it multiple times. And the problem with rereading is whenever you reread, it will never be as good as the first read. You won't be, you know that this is an extra time that you're spending, so you'll always be in a hurry. You'll always read only relevant parts. It will not be as good. And in the end, if you look at your overall time, if you add all these times which I have shown here, you'll end up putting 2 to 3.5 minutes easily for a question instead of 2 minutes. And you don't still have the right answer with you. You're not confident about the right answer still. And if you see, the problem started at the first stage itself. The problem started when you started reading the question stem quickly. Okay, that's when the problem starts. And if you look at the core reason behind this, the core reason is either you're approaching it the wrong way, either you don't know how to approach it, you don't have the right method in place, or you are worried about timing. You think about timing too soon. You think that, okay, it's gonna take me too long to solve the question, but in the end, you're actually spending more time by not giving time to the question stem. So why do you do that? Why not give time to the question stem and save time later? As some of you are saying, Vivek was saying that do it, right? Why don't you do it? That is much better any day, right? And always remember, guys, this is something which will always help you. If you are worried about time too soon, then obviously you're going to cut corners on the question stem, and that's when you will not be able to even save time or get a good accuracy. That's what happened with me. And without the right approach, doesn't matter what you're doing, you will end up falling in the same trap, because sometimes we end up using shortcut driven approach. And I'll just use this for RC as well. Now, when most people read the RCs, they read the RCs quickly in first read, do it in 2-3 minutes, they have a rough idea of what's happened, then they reread when they move to choices, and then that is when they start giving 1.5 minutes to each question. So overall time taken per passage is about 8 to 9 minutes. And the worst part is the confidence level is also not high. Now let's look at what people who score a 700 plus do. They read the passage quickly first time, so they might as well spend 4 or 5 minutes on reading the passage the first time. But the good thing is they have a very crystal clear understanding of what is written. And that's when they're able to eliminate choices more confidently, and and in order to do that, they're only spending 40 seconds per question. They don't need to spend more time than that. Just give me 1 second, guys. I need to drink some water. Just a second. So sorry, guys. Okay, so in order to eliminate the choices, they only need 40 seconds per question now. So in the end, their overall time taken per question is around 7 to 8 minutes only. And the good thing is they're able to get the questions right as well. They're able to solve the questions right accurately without wasting time. Okay, So always remember, you should be reading the question properly. You need to read the question properly the first time. There is no shortcut on GMAT. Nothing can actually get you to the result faster. The only way that works is the right method. And the right methods are basically, for sentence correction, you have to focus on the meaning. For critical reasoning, you need to focus on framework driven pre-thinking, not just pre-thinking. Framework driven pre-thinking is what you need to focus on. Okay. And in RC, you need to focus on involved and evolved reading, something which I talked about today. Okay, these are the right methods. If you focus on the right methods, trust me, guys, you will improve your accuracy automatically. You'll improve your confidence level, you'll improve your confidence and accuracy at the same time, and that will take you places. And trust me, the shortcuts that I talked about, splits, maybe reading the first line and the last line of each para and solving the passage, those things can actually work for you if and only if you get yourself to a level of 90% or more by using these methods first. See, take quant as a parallel. Some people actually use numbers to solve questions very quickly in quant. Now, people who are able to do that are people who understand the logical reason why that is happening in the first place. They know what is the logical method of solving the question, and that's when they're able to identify the I would say the wastes in the method. They're able to understand which steps can be eliminated, and they can jump to the answer from one step to another without really doing all the steps in between. But unless you know the most logical method, unless you have a hold on them, you can't really use shortcuts efficiently. You may be able to solve one question or two questions using a shortcut, but you will not be able to do it on the next question. Okay, that is something which you need to understand. So the framework is very, like, the right approach, learning the right approach is very important. And when you learn the right approach, then you can mix the shortcuts with the right approach to actually get to the best possible outcome. Today I use the splits approach along with the meaning based approach, not apart from it. It's a mix that I use today. I read a little faster, I skim through today, but I use the involved and evolved reading method first. Then I'm able to do it today. Okay. So Deepan, we will be discussing the framework driven pre-thinking concept. I will be having another webinar on the 17th. Most likely will be on CR. We are still finalizing the topic. So most likely it will be on framework driven pre-thinking itself. Okay. So stay tuned. It's on 17th of November that we are going to have it, most likely at 9:30 p.m. IST on this YouTube channel itself, on GMAT Club YouTube channel itself. Okay. I have a question from Laurent. What if I go with the second method but still take 9 to 10 minutes per passage? So Laurent, again, if you go with the right approach, which is the involved and evolved reading approach, and you take 9 to 10 minutes. In fact, initially when you're learning the method, you will actually take more time. You won't be able to solve it in 9 or 10 minutes. You might as well take 11 to 12 minutes or 13 minutes. The time is different for different people. But the good thing is, if you continue using that method on a good number of questions, the time is going to improve automatically. Because whenever you learn a skill, it takes you some extra time in the beginning to learn that skill, whether it is driving, swimming, any skill you talk about. Initially, you have to do it consciously. That's why you take extra time. But once you start practicing that skill on a good number of questions, or you do that multiple times, that skill becomes a second nature. The skill becomes like a part of your subconscious mind. So the effort is much less. Your time is also improved. And that's how it happens. So you have to first work on this method for a good number of questions. Okay. So now this learning the right methods is very, very critical, guys. So make sure that you use these methods. In fact, if you're really looking forward to improve your verbal score, there's one very important announcement that I want to make. We are actually starting a crash course on verbal, which is a 4 weeks crash course aimed towards people who are targeting to take the GMAT in about a month's time, somewhere in December. So what is this crash course about? In this crash course, we are actually going to teach you all these methodologies that I just talked about. All these methods, this meaning-based approach, this involved and evolved reading approach, this framework-driven pre-thinking, and all of it. So all of this is basically going to be taught in this crash course, and this is a very important basically course for you if you are looking to target us V40 plus. Okay, and what we are going to do in this crash course is we are going to offer you a mix of an online course with live sessions. So it includes 30 hours of live classes, 12 webinars basically happening over 4 weekends, starting from the next weekend basically, and 50 hours of live video, like recorded video lectures on the online platform, and 900 plus practice questions. Having each of these questions will be having the solutions and using the same methodologies that I talked about. And we are offering this as a Diwali discount at a special price of $199. For Indian students, it's 14,490 in INR. And if you want to check out the crash course, you can go to our website and check it out using this link, which I've shown on over here. And this batch is going to be of limited students. And this is going to be taught by someone who used to be my tutor. I have learned a lot from her. She's very, very experienced. Sunita Singhvi has 13 years of experience. And in fact, we have recently helped a student get a score of 760 who was working with her. So this is a live batch, live course that you can attend to if you want to improve your methodologies. So think of it like this, that on the weekdays, you'll be going through the online course as part of your homework to complete individual lessons on each of the areas. And on the weekends, you will have this live sessions where Sunita is going to help you apply the methodologies on 700 plus level questions. We will give you questions to solve, and then we will solve those questions right in front of you to help you understand how you need to adapt that methodology. And then when you go through the online course also, you'll see the same methodologies being used over there. Okay, so if you wish to look at this crash course, if you wish to improve your verbal scores, you can definitely check this product out. Okay, now that we know about the right methods, how do we master the method? Okay, the very important part, you should not just be knowing, because see, when I talk to a lot of people, many students know that pre-thinking works, know that involved and evolved reading works, know that meaning-based approach works. And they say that I am trying to use this, but I'm still not getting the outcome. I'm still stuck at around 30, 35. Now, when I actually ask them to solve a question right in front of me by using that approach, more often than not, in fact, in 90% of the cases, they don't even know how to use the approach properly. They just know that approach exists. They just focus on try to apply that approach, but they're not able to apply because they don't know exactly what is the step-by-step approach to do it. Okay, that's a very, very common problem that I see from students. So that's why I'm going to focus a little more on this part now. Remember, learning the right method is just the first step in the right direction. Mastering it is actually going to make you achieve the goal. And now, why is mastering the approach important? Because many people, when I speak to them, many people, what they do is their focus, their idea of mastering the approach is simple. They will just do one thing: practice tons of questions. In fact, I was having a word with one student a couple of days back, and the student was telling me that, okay, right now I'm only able to solve 40, 45 questions a day because I'm a working professional. I don't get more time than that. And I've exhausted all the questions. So I'll try to practice more and actually get to the output. And I asked, since how long have you been doing 40, 45 questions a day? And the response was, it has been 3 months. I said, what has been the improvement in the last 3 months? The answer was about 10 to 20 points. So clearly there's something wrong with the way you are going about it. When you practice questions, when you just focus on practicing questions using a particular approach, what you are actually doing is you're actually repeating the same mistake again and again. And most people also believe in taking a good number of mock tests. In reality, basically, you don't learn from questions, you actually learn from the solutions. That is something which is very, very important. Okay, so you actually learn from the solution. So I'm actually going to move over a few slides because I feel that we are running short on time. So there was a lot of slides which were there, but let's focus on how can you learn from each and every solution overall. Okay, so how do most people analyze the solutions? Let's see that. When I was also a student, this is what I used to do. Whenever I solved a question, I only focus on the questions which I got wrong. I only focused on reading the solution for the questions which I got wrong. That was what I used to do as a student, because obviously if I got a question right, there was very less incentive for me to read the question completely, because I always felt that like I've done this right, so why should I read the solution? But then I realized that when I'm not reading the solution for the right questions, I'm assuming that I've gotten it right for the right reason also, which may not be the case always. In fact, When people read the solution only for the wrong questions, there's a very high chance that they spend time only on option analysis. They spend time on reading the answer choice which is right and the answer choice that they marked. In many cases, they don't even look at the question stem analysis. Okay, and if you do this, there will not be much scope for improvement in your scores. You need to definitely change this approach of reviewing the solutions if you want a different score. And let me tell you how you should review the solutions. How can you master the approach? So remember, you have to always refer to solutions following a consistent and logical method. So you should be referring to not just any solutions. If you go randomly and just look at question solutions, that's not going to help. You need to refer to solutions that use a logical method, not just one or two questions. Okay, the method should be logical as well as consistent. Remember that. Second thing that you need to do is that you need to verify each question irrespective of whether you get it right. Remember this part. Even if you get a question right, review the solution, verify each part of your understanding irrespective of whether you get it right, and spend 80% of your time reviewing the sentence, argument, or the passage. Okay, spend 80% of your effort doing that. Don't just like read the option choices. Let's say if you are spending 5 minutes on reviewing the solution, 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes easily should be spent on what is the analysis of the sentence, meaning of the sentence rather. What is the scope of the argument? In fact, in RCs, your focus should be on what is the uh, understanding of each and every para. Okay, you should be focusing on the passage analysis in that case. And when you are doing that, you need to note down the variances in your approach so that you are able to master the right approach. So when you are reviewing the solution, this passage, sentence, or argument analysis should be from the standpoint of the right approach, should be pointing out the right methodology. And when you actually read it like that, you are able to draw the variances from your approach, from the approach that you are using right now with that particular approach. When you're actually able to draw the variances, you actually understand where your methodology is going wrong. And that actually helps you to improve your scores much faster. Okay, so that's how you master the right approach. So I'm going to show you an example. Okay, so let's quickly solve this CR question. Giving you the CR question to solve. uh, I'm going to give you 2.5 minutes, and I'm not going to solve this question, by the way, but I just want you to solve this question quickly so that I can actually show you how to analyze the solution when you're solving this, when you're reviewing the solution. Okay, so all the best. I'm going to be muted for a couple of minutes so that you guys can solve this question at your end, and you can feel free to post your responses. Okay, guys. So I guess you guys would have solved this question by now. So if you want, you can put down your responses in the comments here. Let's see what your responses are. Okay, and as I said, I'm not going to solve this question, but I want you guys to understand how to review it, the solution. And for that, that's why I actually wanted you to solve it, so that you're able to relate to the solution part of it. Okay, so I don't see any comments. Did you guys find this question too difficult to solve? Okay, still no responses. Maybe there's a lag. I'm not sure if on the other screen also I can't see any responses yet. No worries. So let's look at how do we review the solution, because anyway we don't need to solve this question. It's more about how you review the solution after you solve it. So let's say when you actually review the solution from a pre-thinking standpoint, framework-driven pre-thinking standpoint, the first step we teach in that is analyzing the question stem and the stimulus properly. So how you review the solution is, for example, if you see in the solution, we have presented the analysis of the first sentence. Okay, basically this was the first sentence that is there. We have presented the analysis of the first sentence first. So what you need to do is, when you're reviewing the solution, you need to read the inference. This is basically the inference that we have drawn from the first sentence. The total area of currently cultivated land is equal to total area of unexplored land. You need to read this inference and ask yourself a question, that when I read till this part, what I mean is till cultivation. When I read only till cultivation, was I able to come to the same inference over here? If yes, then you have done a good job. If no, then even if you have gotten the answer, you have made a mistake. Why am I saying you have made a mistake? Simple reason being that you might have gotten the question right in this case, but even a 700 level question, if you don't draw inferences after every sentence, you might not as well be lucky on that day. Okay, so that's how you read the solution. Then you will read the solution inference for the second sentence. So in the second sentence, basically the inference drawn is, there is a lot more cultivable land on earth than current estimates indicate. And you need to ask yourself that when I read the second part, when I read this particular portion till this part, did I actually come up with the same inference or not? If you did, good, go ahead. If you did not, then you have made a mistake again. Similarly, you will again look at the inference till the third part. Because if you actually are able to derive the same inferences at every stage, trust me, there's no chance that you will make a mistake in the question. Okay, and I've just shown you step one, which is like the analysis of the stimulus and question stem, because once you do this, you get a pretty good understanding of what is the scope of the argument. Okay, and that's what matters most in CR. Okay, and then step two is pre-thinking, and step three is answer choice elimination. I'm not showing you that to you, but I guess now you guys understand how to analyze the solution. Okay, please say yes if you understood how to analyze the solution now. How do you analyze each and every solution properly? Okay, and I would like to know how many of you are doing that as well today, because that's something which I actually never used to do as a student. In fact, in all likelihood, I only used to go through the wrong answers and why those answers are wrong. And I used to always worry why this is happening with me. Even after solving questions, even after reviewing the wrong answers, I'm again repeating the same mistakes. Okay, so I used to worry why this is happening. The reason which I understood later was that I was never analyzing the question stem. I was never matching my understanding of the question stem with what is supposed to be. Okay, so I'm happy that Benny and Lily, you are able to get the idea how to review the solutions. It's very, very critical that you do this. And in fact, I tell all my students to do this. In fact, I'm going to talk about one of my students who actually improved his score from a 650 to 730 in just 24 days. Okay, this guy, Akshat, when I actually spoke to him after his test was over, and I asked him, what did you do in this 24 days? What was different? He said that the first thing that he did was he improved his understanding of the methodologies which are tested on CR. For example, framework-driven pre-thinking, he improved his understanding. He knew it, but he improved his understanding further. And how he improved his understanding was he reviewed the solutions in depth for the correct answers as well. Not just the wrong answers, for the correct answers as well. And what he was trying to do there was he was identifying patterns in the incorrect answers. Okay, he was trying to make sure that he understands the traps that GMAT sets. See, GMAT always has they have a standard way of making the incorrect choices. Okay, so they use distortion in some cases, they use distortion of truth, they use out of scope choices, they use irrelevant choices, they use opposite answer choices also. So these are standard ways in which they create incorrect choices. So what Akshat was doing was, in this case, was he was trying to identify the patterns. He was matching his understanding of the incorrect answers with these patterns. And that's when he actually started evolving his thought process to the next level. He was coming up with the idea of where GMAT is trapping him. And he said that on the 730 attempt, he was able to easily identify why things were wrong, why the wrong answers were wrong. And since he was a GMAT Viz student, at GMAT Viz, we always tell you which option choices are incorrect for what reason. Okay, so he was using the GMAT Viz course to understand this better, to get a clear cut idea of how the answer choices are incorrect, why the answer choices are incorrect, and this solutions helped him clarify that thought process altogether. Okay, so that's what he did in order to improve his understanding of the uh, traps overall. All right. And the last thing which he did was, it's very important, is he revisited weak areas to improve his understanding of them before the test. And he made sure that he believed in himself during the test. He stayed calm and composed and just replicated that behavior on the testing. And he's not the only person who has done this. Right method holds the key. In fact, Rajiv, this student is a live example of someone who was stuck at verbal for quite a long time. He was in fact stuck at a 680 score. He got only a 34 in verbal, even after putting in 1.5 years of preparation. Okay, but he changed his methodologies to improve his score to a 740 with a verbal 41 in no time. Okay, and he is not the only. What I'm trying to say here is, Akshat, Rajiv, they are not the only ones to do it. Anytime when we have worked with people and they have changed their approach, even Vamsi Kathy, another student of ours, who scored a 570 after 10 months of prep. His verbal score was 26, quant was 43. He improved his understanding and is able to improve his score to 720 with a verbal 38 and quant 50. So what is the most important part here is, you need to use the right methods, and then only you can get the outcome that you desire. Okay, so if you want to check out Rajiv's interview later on, you can actually use this link. Let me share it with you. I conducted this interview on the GMAT Club YouTube channel itself. So you guys can actually go through Rajiv's interview later on if you want to. So this is the link. You can just bookmark it if you want to, click it and save it somewhere. And you can go through his record, like debrief. It's a very inspiring debrief, because this guy really struggled to get to the outcome. He's not an IITian, not an IITian either. He's someone who actually struggled with verbal a lot. And when he changed his methods, he was able to get to his dream score automatically. Okay, so make sure that you focus on mastering the right methods, and each one of these success stories will tell you how you can do it. So you can go through the success stories later on. Now let's talk about how can you strategize your prep. Now that we understand what is the right method, how to master the right method, now let's put all of these thoughts into action. Okay, so how can you create the right plan of action to get to your desired outcome? Okay, so now, if you are let me tell you one thing right away over here itself, that this study plan that needs to be created is very personalized. In fact, you need to consider a lot of factors, especially if you are scoring 670 or more. Like I saw that there were some people who were scoring 690, 700 also in their mock tests, or they have taken the GMAT and scored that much. So if you are at that skill level, or in fact even lower than that, it is important that when you are creating your study plan, you take into account the following factors. The first factor is, you need to take into account how much time is available with you to study. The second factor that you need to take into account while creating your plan is, what is your target GMAT score? The third factor you need to take into account is, what are the resources that you have utilized currently? Because obviously, if you have gone through certain material already, then it is important for us to know it in order to actually tell you, advise you, how should you go about the next step. For example, when Akshat was a student who only used like GMAT Viz course, he did not use any other course. His story was different. Rajiv used EGMAT, Manhattan, and Veritas earlier. Manhattan and Veritas mostly for the mocks and EGMAT course earlier. Vamsi was someone who used Manhattan classroom coaching, which was a different module altogether. So all of them came from different backgrounds. So the strategies for them were very, very different. Like different ways work for different for them. You need to also take into account your strengths and weaknesses. You need to also take into account what are the methods that you're using. So basically this point is somewhere related to the resources that you have used, because if most different resources use different methods, so what are you using today is very important for us to know in order to help you create the study plan. And then it's also important for us to know what is the learning style. So these are 6 7 factors which go into which are taken as an input in order to help you get to the right study plan. So if you're scoring a 670 or more, these factors are going to be very complicated. And I generally prefer to actually have a one-on-one discussion with people who are in this score range to understand them better and help them, advise them with respect to how they can improve their score, how they can create a study plan for themselves. So if you want to, if you're at this score range, or if you want to discuss it with me over a call, you can use this link which I have shared over here to book a consultation call with me. It's a free call. Don't worry about that. We can connect, and I will actually love to know all these factors which are written over here in order to advise you how you can go about your prep in a shorter period of time. Obviously, there is a crash course that I talked about earlier. You can look at that. That will actually take care of most of the things. But if you want other advice around your study plan also, please feel free to reach out to me. You can always use this thing to schedule a call. Now, for people who are below the 670 score range, like who are below the score range, for them, I'm going to talk about a rough like strategy, how you can create a strategic plan of action to get to your outcome. For people who are above this, you can always schedule the call to directly discuss with me. Okay. So first thing that you need to do is you need to understand the right sequence of studying for verbal. So there are 3 skills which are tested on GMAT Verbal. The first skill is your comprehension skill. The second skill which is tested is the analytical reasoning skill. And the third skill that is tested is focus on main point. Now, comprehension skills is only tested on sentence correction. Sorry, my bad. Comprehension skill is the only skill that is tested on sentence correction. Analytical reasoning and comprehension both are tested on critical reasoning, and all 3 skills are tested on reading comprehension. So in order to get the maximum outcome possible from the time that you spend, it is very important that you go forward in this order. You should be working on sentence correction, followed by critical reasoning, followed by reading comprehension. And this is more important for people, like you need to understand this is the most logical order. And this is more important for people who are at a score range of less than 30 right now. And if you have already prepared significantly, let's say you are like in the range of 34, 35, what you need to do is you need to take a module wise test in SC, CR, and RC and understand which are your strong areas and which are your weak areas. So for example, let's say you take a module wise test in all 3 areas and you find that in SC your score is 90%, in CR your score is 60%, and RC your score is 40%. So clearly your strong area is sentence correction. CR and RC are your weaker areas. So what should be the right order for you? What you need to do is you need to work on CR and RC first, and then you need to work on sentence correction. Okay. And remember, I'm saying CR followed by RC, even though RC score is lesser than CR score. Okay. Any idea why am I saying this? Any idea, guys? Why am I saying this? Can anyone of you tell me why am I saying this? Again, I have not asked the question in a long time, so just wanted to see if you guys are here with me. Any idea why am I saying this? Why CR before RC, even though the RC performance is not as great as CR? What do you think? What is the possible reason behind this? Let's see some responses from you. Okay. Okay. I have a response from Movie. Says similar structure to start off with. Okay, good. So basically think of it like this, that CR and like if you are weak in CR and you're weak in RC, there is a possibility that you are weak because of your analytical reasoning skills. Now, if you are weak because of analytical reasoning and you actually start working on RC, you need to work on analytical reasoning as well as main point, both of them at once, which is going to be much more difficult. Okay, it's much better to work on CR first to put your analytical reasoning skills up, and then once you have your analytical reasoning skills taken care of, when you work with move to RC, that will actually help you. So CR will help improve RC as well. Good point. I'm really happy with the responses from SP Chaudhary, Amar, Movie, and uh, Mudit. Good, guys. So make sure that it is very important that you understand the right order. Now, how do you learn the right approach? So as I said, you need to understand the method, but in order to learn the right method, you need to solve 15 questions using that methodology, and you need to solve one question at a time, not many questions together. You need to solve just one question at a time. And when you are doing this, it's very important that you review the explanation and avoid the deviations from the methodology. Okay, and you remember I told you how you should be reviewing the solutions. I told you that already a little while back. I showed you a couple of one question, and I showed you how you are supposed to review it. So solve 15 questions one at a time. So one question, review the solution, understand the difference, understand the variances from the method. Then when you go to the second question, you're able to apply that on the second question, and you're able to improve your understanding on the second question also. And iteratively, when you do this for 15 questions, by the time you're reaching the end of the 15th question, you will have a very clear understanding of how things work. Okay, so make sure you do this. Now, what's the next step? Uh, the again, before I come to the next step, another challenge that students face is when I ask them to actually review the solutions which provide, when solutions are provided in the methodical way, people face this challenge that generally most of the resources do not provide a very methodical solution. Most of the solutions are very to the point, mostly focusing on the right and the wrong answers, not so much so on the question stem and the methodology. So what you can do is, if you are a GMAT Viz student, you can access some content on GMAT Viz even for free. There is some free trial available. You can check out that content. But at GMAT Viz, we make sure that the entire course itself is very application focused. So in every single question in GMAT Viz, every solution in GMAT Viz is provided using a methodical approach which is consistent everywhere. Okay, and in order to do that, we spend twice the amount of time on writing the solution as we spend on creating the question. So we spend a lot of effort to do that, just to ensure that all the solutions are methodical. So if you want, you can actually check out the free trial of GMAT Viz as well. On the website, there is some free content available that will help you get an idea about the solution. So here's the link. You can check it out at your end later on as well. Okay, so for right learning curve for each topic is that you need to learn the concepts, followed by learning the application of those concepts, and then the practicing on those questions, practicing questions on those concepts using the quizzes. So in GMAT Viz, we follow this trajectory for every single topic. You first go through the video lectures, then in the concept booster, this is the file that you should look out for. You learn the right method to solve the questions. Okay, so how do you master each module? So as I said, learn the right approach for each module. First, when I said learn the right module approach, what I meant by that was you need to understand what it is and then solve 15 questions one at a time to master the approach. Okay, and then you should take 4 to 5 sectional tests to fine tune. So once you have mastered the approach for each topic, let's say you have mastered the meaning based approach by solving those 15 questions, you might as well do 20-30 questions more by until you feel you are at a point where you are able to solve questions within the timed environment using the same methodology. And once you are done with that, you need to take 4 to 5 sectional tests to fine tune. When I say fine tune, what I mean to say here is that you should be understanding exactly what is the weak areas, what are the weak areas that further exist. So it is possible that in sentence correction you are focusing on the meaning based approach, but when it comes to comparison related questions, or let's say parallelism related questions, there are some errors that you're still making. So in such cases, identify those areas and fine tune those areas, rework on those areas that will help you improve your scores further. Okay, so that's how you go about each and every module, and then you can take a couple of mock tests, 3 4 mock tests, and see where your score is. Okay, so that's pretty much about the today's session. I'm opening this session now to formally for a Q&A. I hope, yeah, we are almost on time. 1 minute, 1 hour 30 minutes is what I accounted for the main chart, so just 5 minutes behind schedule. But yeah, am here for another 10 minutes. If you guys want to discuss with any questions with me, you can feel free to do that. You can always write to me at piyush@gmatviz.com, or you can also WhatsApp me on the number that is provided. I'm also going to share the link to schedule a free consultation call with me if you would like to discuss your strategy one-on-one instead of on this live webinar. You can always feel free to do that. But feel free to ask any questions that you have around your prep right now with me. I'm more than happy to take them up. Okay, let's see if I have any questions. And in the meantime, uh, if you actually like this webinar, if you actually benefited from this webinar, uh, please feel free to like it so that it can reach out to more people who are in a similar situation as yours, and they can actually benefit from the webinar as well. So feel free to like the webinar to help it reach to more people, and feel free to ask any questions that you have. Okay, so I have a question from, okay, so Benny says thanks for the session. I'm happy to know, Benny, that the session helped you. Okay, let's see if anyone else has a question. Again, there is a lag. I am seeing the questions after a minute or two, maybe. So please bear with me if I am taking some time to respond to your questions. So Mudit says, if the crash course is suitable for me, I'm having 29 in verbal. So Mudit, again, the crash course is actually ideal for people who are in the low 30s or high 20s. It's basically for people who have done some bit of prep and they want to take their score to 40 plus. So definitely is the most, it actually is suitable. Basically the score range around that high 20s or low 30s basically tell me that your conceptual knowledge is sound. What you're looking for is advanced application of those concepts, and that's what we are going to focus on in the crash course that we are going to have. Okay, in fact, we are recently about to close one batch which is about to end in 1 week, and we have got amazing feedback from students who have attended it. They have seen, already started seeing amazing improvement in this course. Okay, Lily, I'm happy to know that the webinar helped. Please feel free to give it a like if you actually benefited from the webinar. Okay, let's see if I have any other question. Is you said practice analysis, could use source that enables to practice RC based on question types. So Nurul, again, sectional tests are important, but that is the next step, which is after mastering the methodology. So make sure you master the methodology first. Now, with respect to online resource to practice questions, some of the best resources are like official guides, like official question bank, advanced question bank, and all of that. GMAT Viz also has a quizzing platform, which is about 900 overall questions in the entire course, including the quizzing platform. So you can use sectional tests on our platform as well. Laurent is asking, what if I am at a 25, 27? I guess, Laurent, you're asking for the crash course. So see, again, if you are around 25, 27, I said high 20s and low 30s. It is basically ideal for those people. So it is definitely a good course for you as well, because you're almost having a similar skill level overall. So 1 or 2 points here and there does not make much of a difference. So this is a verbal crash course. It's focused on verbal, 12 sessions, 30 hours of verbal focused discussion. So it is ideal for you. Ashish says, what's the fee for the crash course? So Ashish, the fee for the crash course is $199. If you are from India, it will be 14,490 rupees. So I'll just share the link of the crash course as well. Just give me a second, guys. I'm just sharing the link of the crash course because I see a lot of questions around it. So you guys who want to check out about the crash course, you can actually do it using this link. And there is a Diwali discount that we are running at, because of which the price is a little lower. As of now, it's 14,490, which is $199. This price will go up after Diwali. So make sure you, if you want to subscribe to it, you should do it in this on this weekend itself. Okay. Let's, will it be comfortable for working professionals? So Mudit, the requirement from the crash course is about 25 hours a week. So if you have 25 hours a week, then uh, definitely suitable for you, basically. And remember, if you're looking at a 1 month, this is a crash course which is aimed for people who are targeting GMAT in another month or so, basically. So I would recommend you to put about 25, 30 hours if you are struggling in verbal. So that will help you get to your target outcome. Okay, Sarah says, will there be a crash course of quant? Maybe both. So Sarah, since a lot of people are looking at round two, which is just 1.5 months away, we have only launched a crash course for verbal as of now. Earlier, we have launched another crash course for verbal and quant, but it is about to be over. So we are not having a crash course for quant as of now. It's only for verbal right now, but you can check out our online course. It is a pretty detailed course. In fact, most of our improvement, we have delivered 130 plus points improvement till now. Our online course alone has delivered 100 plus 10 plus points of improvement. So it's a pretty detailed course out there. So you can check that out. The free trial is available for you. Okay. So any other questions you guys have about your prep? Feel free to ask me here. Okay. Thanks, Ashish. I'm happy to help. And please give this webinar video a thumbs up if you liked it, so that it can help, it can reach more and more students. I've tried my best to help you guys with what I struggle with, because I've seen a lot of people struggling in verbal, and I have seen significant changes in myself, in my performance, once I changed my methodologies. So make sure you focus on the same thing, because that's the most critical thing overall. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. I'm happy that I could help. Anyone else has any questions? Okay. You're welcome, Mudit. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions regarding the crash course later on as well. Check it out on the website. You'll get to see it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay, guys. So I'm going to wait for a couple more minutes, see if anyone else has any other questions. Thank you, Vijay. Happy to know it helped. Okay, still don't see any other questions. All right, so I don't see any other questions as of now. So I feel that all of you had your questions answered. It was great interacting with you guys. All the best for your GMAT. Feel free to check out our crash course. It is definitely going to be very focused for those who are actually aiming to get a V40 plus on GMAT. And feel free to reach out to me on this contact details. And those who are from India, Indians staying abroad, very happy Diwali in advance to you. May this Diwali bring lots of joy and happiness to you.